let's get to it. So I know at some point in the next 15 minutes, you're going to talk about giving money to a whole bunch of people, right? We're going to get to that.
He's rubbing his
But we have to address something first. Let's talk about the Yang Gang.
Let's get to it. You're unique among the entire field in that you have had a bunch of white supremacists who have decided somehow that you're their guy. So how does a President Andrew Yang deal with the issue of white supremacy in America?
Well, first, I was stunned to hear that anyone who has any kind of hateful ideology in their hearts would support me, because I certainly don't look like the poster boy for white supremacy. But to me, we have to give Americans a path forward. We can let people know that hate is not the answer and that we have better futures if we all actually see ourselves as part of a larger whole.
So what does that look like concretely as a president?
What that looks like concretely is putting resources directly into our communities to be able to fuel positive role models, nonprofits, religious organizations. So if we listen to the teachings of Martin Luther King, whose birthday we're celebrating today, he advocated a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. And if you can imagine what an extra $1,000 a month would mean in the hands of each family and then multiplied by the families in a community, you would have a lot of that money go to local nonprofits and youth groups and religious organizations that would end up fueling many more positive paths forward for young people instead of having them just get lost and feel like they have no future.
Told you he was going to get to talking about giving money to a whole bunch of people.
I'm pretty predictable that way.
Because I want to back up, because I want to point out that I started off with a question about white supremacy and dealing with that, this is something you've said is a problem in America, but we ended up with talking about handing people money. I mean, does handing people money fix racism?
Of course not. So as president, one of my top priorities would be to label white nationalist terrorism as its own category of terrorism and say, look, by the numbers, this is the most prevalent form of terrorism in the country today. And you can't fight something if you don't measure it. But at the same time, if you have an environment of shrinking opportunities, then it's much easier to turn on each other. And in that environment, if someone comes to you and says, hey, blame these people, it's their fault, then you're much more likely to listen than if you feel secure and stable in your own future and the future of your children.
There are an awful lot of rich racists, though.
Yes, there are. But when you go to those environments, the racism looks a little different. Like it's not the sort of white supremacist violence that I think we're talking about right now. It takes more institutional forms, which is obviously not a good thing. I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah.
We need to try and combat racism at every level. But the fact is, if you put this money into our hands, it helps people of every background.
So everybody gets $1,000 a month.
Everybody gets $1,000 a month.
Elon Musk gets $1,000 a month.
My friend Elon, who endorsed me, does get $1,000 a month. But in the plan, Elon would end up paying much more into the system, which he's totally cool with. For some of the folks I know in Silicon Valley, they're from the Midwest. They realize that we have to bring everyone along for the 21st century and feel like we're all participating in the innovation and progress.
So there are a number of black economists that have been talking about universal basic income as a potential solution for wealth inequality, the racial wealth inequality gap in this country for years. They've been championing this, actually. But a lot of those same black economists have described your plan as dangerous for the reason that the tax that you're proposing that would pay for this whole thing would disproportionately hit poor families harder, and that it could actually exacerbate the racial wealth gap in this country. And so you can't both be right here, right?
Well, in a vacuum, a value-added tax does end up falling on people who are starting out with less money. But the great thing about a value-added tax, which has been used in literally dozens of other countries, is that you can ratchet it up on things like artificial intelligence and yachts and luxury watches, and you can exempt things like diapers, milk, and toilet paper. Make it so that Americans who are just consuming things that we all consume just to live our lives are not paying more, and it's the folks that aren't going to feel it as much who are going to be paying much, much more into the system.
You have a habit of making self-deprecating jokes about Asian Americans a lot. And the harshest criticism you've actually gotten about this is from other Asian Americans, making jokes about being good at math, making jokes about being good on tests, knowing a lot of doctors, things like this. I think there's an argument for these same stereotypes, which may be viewed as harmless or funny, that they come from the same place as the more sinister ones. Why keep doing this?
Well, I'm certainly very proud of being the first Asian American man to run for president as a Democrat. And it was an honor and disappointment to be the lone candidate of color on the debate stage the last time. I think that making light of these stereotypes and dragging them into the light is not a bad thing. I think Americans are smart enough to realize that if I say something about, liking math, that doesn't mean that the millions of Asian Americans out there all like math, and that by poking fun at these things that we can actually see them for how ridiculous they are. But when I talk to Asian Americans around the country, I'm happy to say that many of them are invigorated by my campaign and see that we have to do more to contribute to this country that has given, frankly, families like mine so much.
So I know you enjoyed talking to the two of us, but there are some audience members that would love to chat with you as well. Paula, who do you have first?
So Karen, if you want to stand up, Karen is a professor at Iowa State University.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you for being here today. My question is about health outcomes. I'm talking about Black and brown people who have insurance coverage, but yet when they go to the doctor or seek medical treatment, they end up with worse health outcomes than white people. So what will you do in your health plan to deal with these health disparities?
I made mention last time I was on the debate stage that an African-American woman is 320% more likely to die from complications in pregnancy and childbirth than a white woman in this country. And that stat horrified me as a human being, as a parent. And so I went looking and said, how the heck is that disparity so prevalent? And a lot of it is that doctors and medical professionals don't listen to Black women when they talk about what's going on with their bodies and their health. Another aspect of it is that apparently the stress levels for Black women are just higher throughout the years approaching pregnancy, and that ends up making them more susceptible to negative health outcomes. And that's not just for pregnancy, that's across the board. Unfortunately, it's just more stressful being Black in this society than it is being white. And so you have rampant health outcomes as a result of that. So there are a few things you can do, and you can't do it all at the federal level, but here are some things you can do. Number one, we have to train our medical professionals to listen to people of color when they talk about their health issues and problems, instead of just saying, like, I'm the doctor or a nurse, like, I know best. Number two, we need to invest in having more diversity and representation in terms of our healthcare professionals. And then we make it so that if you're growing up brown and Black in this country, you still feel like you can make ends meet, your future is secure, you're less stressed out day to day, and hopefully we can close the disparity between health outcomes of Black and white people in this country.
If you could be invisible, what would be the first thing you do?
Eavesdrop on the other candidates.
Okay. Fill in the blank. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is
Humpty.
Pronounced with an umpty. All right. What was your worst job?
Busboy at a Chinese restaurant. I didn't qualify to be a waiter because my Chinese was too lousy. Sorry.
That y'all don't, okay.
Jordan or LeBron?
Jordan, but LeBron could pass him.
When's the last time you smoked weed?
Past life.
What's the last TV show you binge watched?
I watched This Is Us with my wife.
What's your biggest fear?
That we don't eradicate poverty in the time we have.
What's a topic that you're embarrassed that you don't know more about?
That's a great question. Soccer.
And Jay-Z lyrics.
I guess so. I mean, I screwed that up just now.
So how did Mr. Yang do, folks?
Yay! I'm gonna be president!
Thank you very much, Mr. Yang. We really appreciate your time.
Team, subscribe for more of these type of videos.